Hi, we've got about one more minute left. As we fill in that minute, that was Cedric Burnside, Mississippi musician from the North Country Hill folk blues musician tradition. And a big thanks to my colleague Leslie Barker, who made this wonderful public playlist for us today. Um, Hi, we've got a few more seconds left to go, and at 3 o'clock we will be starting. So please get your breath in, get your water if you need it. We'll be here roughly an hour, but hopefully a very quick hour. All right. Okay, it is 3 o'clock. Hello, good afternoon, good people of Mississippi. Welcome to the Mississippi Arts Commission America 250 Public Art Grant Webinar. I am your host today, Simone Cottrell, and let's just get into it. I've got a PowerPoint presentation for y'all today, and let me get there. And also, we are recording this session, so should you need it in the future, we will have it available on the website, as well as if you would like this PowerPoint PDF for the future as well, feel free to email me. I'll be more than happy to share it with you. All right, let's get into it. Okay, yet again, my name is Simone Cottrell, Special Initiatives Director at Mississippi Arts Commission. Um, let's do some housekeeping real quick. I'm using Zoom today. First and foremost, I am like probably one of the few millennials who have very little experience using Zoom on this capacity. So please give me some grace and forgive me if I misspeak or don't know exactly where these buttons are, but hopefully I've studied it enough to direct you well. So for today's webinar, video and audio for our attendees is currently disabled, but we do have the Q&A option for you. Feel free to put in questions, and it'll come to myself and my co-pilot, Victoria Meek. And we have broken up in our PowerPoint today sessions, a spot where we can address these, I'm sorry, a spot where we can address these questions. We also have the chat function available for y'all. If you want to send us a note, know that it'll just come to myself and Victoria. We also have closed captions option right now. So if you look towards the bottom of your screen on Zoom, more to the right, you should see closed captions. You can choose that option if you should need it. And we are also recording. Again, this recording will be made available for you in the future or for those who were not able to attend one of the 3 webinars regarding America 250 Public Art Grant. So what's on the agenda today? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas that we hope to cover within the hour. Again, hopefully it's a very quick hour and you have a lot of fun listening to my voice. We're going to do some brief introductions of Mac and myself. What is the scope of Mac's America 250 grant? I'm sure you have heard America 250 a million times, and you perhaps may be familiar with the Mississippi Humanities America 250 grant. But this is going to solely focus on what Mac is doing with the America 250 funding. We're going to lean into some key information that will look a little different from Mac grants past. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what is public art, and it may be a little bit more than you anticipated regarding like how to experience public art and where you can find public art. Then we will talk about the grant criteria and how your project will be scored. And then finally, how to use the Mac grant portal and the overview of the application. So, brief introductions. Some of you may be familiar with Mississippi Arts Commission, some of you may not. And so let's just talk about it. Who is MAC? So MAC is the official grants making and service agency for the arts in the state of Mississippi. We are funded annually through the Mississippi Legislature, the National Endowment for the Arts, and private funds. Our mission: foster creativity that enhances the quality of life in Mississippi communities through statewide investment in the arts. If you go to our website, arts.ms.gov, Um, and you toggle over grants. We have all these grants available throughout the year. The America 250 grant is a special initiative. It is a one-time grant. But I would love to encourage you to also toggle over the programs that we have available. Yes, we do make grants, but we also have these worlds of programs that we do to support the arts in Mississippi, including whole school education and the Mississippi Arts Hour, which feature a lot of my colleagues. And you can stream that podcast on any of your preferred streaming choices, as well as listen to it on MPB radio on Sundays. And who am I? Again, I'm Simone Cottrell, Special Initiatives Director, Mississippi Arts Commission. I come to this position with 3 areas of expertise. I consider myself a cultural strategist, a community storyteller, and a Deep South creative. But for these purposes, I am your main contact for a Max America 250 Public Art Grant. Any questions having to deal with the Public Art Grant come directly to me, and I will assist you from there. I've also happened to help people understand Mississippi Humanities Council, where to direct them to that grant. So sometimes those things overlap. But feel free to take a screenshot of this, this image right here. But again, you can get this PDF at a later time. All right. So what is the brief overview of the America 250 Public Art Grant? Okay, first and foremost, it is a $100,000 grant program supported by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Mississippi Legislature. A total of 10 awards will be granted, and we've split them in half, sort of, kind of. So the 5 will be $12,000 grants for orgs with fiscal year 26 operating budgets of $250K and above. The other 5 is an $8K grant for orgs with fiscal year 26 operating budgets under $250K. For these grants, there is a 1-to-1 match. A minimum of 10% must be a cash match. The remaining 90% can be in kind. We are aiming to have each of these awards represented across Mississippi's 5 large regional areas. So each of these areas, the Gulf Coast, Capitol Rivers, Pines, Hills, and the Delta, we hope to have one $12,000 grant and one $8,000 grant represented for each of those areas, because we want to make sure that for this very specific award in this very special time in our country's semi-centennial, I butchered that word. I'm not going to even try it. America's birthday next year, that all the narratives that we can find are represented across Mississippi. The grant portal is currently open for this grant. It opened on November 17th, 2025, and it will close January 15th, 2026 at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you are not familiar with the grant portal, please go ahead and bookmark this link right here, arts.ms.gov /apply. You will be going back to that frequently as you are putting your application together. Other things that you should know about this grant, due to the timeline, it's a really tight timeline for us. The project expenses for creating the public art must be incurred between March 1st, 2026 and June 30th, 2026. So if you are one of the 10 awardees, we just want to make sure that you're paying for the creation of the artwork between these dates. And you can have the unveiling, the event, the celebration, the party, whatever you want to call it, at any time. Also, and I'll say this twice today for sure, your proposed public art project does not have to be a brand new project. If there was something that was already in the built into your programming for fiscal year 26, and you look at it and you go, wow, this could actually fit really well if we just tweak it a little bit to fit the America 250, go ahead and do it. If there's no need to recreate a will or make a new will if you already have something that really works. Eligibility. The eligibility, who is eligible for the America 250 Public Art Grant? Those are going to be our 501c3s, schools, libraries, municipalities, and units of government. MAC will prioritize arts and culture 501c3s for this grant. That does not mean that you should not apply if you do not identify as an arts and culture 501c3. We just want to make sure that we are looking at those who identify or have very strong arts and culture programming, that they are looked at a little bit more closely, and then we'll go from there. Organizations, also folks who are ineligible, organizations that have received a cumulative total of $30,000 from MAC within fiscal year 26 are ineligible for this grant. So if you have applied for MAC during fiscal year 26 and you have won like a million awards and you total up all that award money and it's 29,999.99 cents, guess what? You're still eligible. Hooray. We just wanted to make sure that for this particular grant that we can spread the wealth a little bit more. All right, here are some new things to be aware of for this particular grant. We thought it'd be a good time to test out some areas that are definitely affecting arts and culture, the field, as well as artists themselves. These are working guidelines. We're just seeing how they work, how people respond to them. And the first one that we want to address with y'all today is regarding generative AI. And I'll just go ahead and read what we have here. Mississippi Arts Commission, working guideline on generative artificial intelligence, also known as AI, use in the arts. The Mississippi Arts Commission, MAC, recognizes artificial intelligence, AI, as a tool that can support and enhance human creativity. MAC acknowledges the value of generative AI in improving accessibility and supporting individuals of varying abilities who wish to engage arts and culture, both creatively and administratively. MAC maintains that human authorship and creative intent must remain at the core of all artistic and administrative processes. For grant applications, a human applicant must develop, review, and enter all required data. In the creation of artworks, a human artist, creative, or collective must serve as the primary author and creative force behind the work. The final result must reflect human authorship and intent rather than generative AI generated work. And that looks like not having a personal voice and definitely leaving out very specific details, especially when it comes to this grant and thinking about community. All of that is to say that we recognize that AI can be a very helpful tool for many people. We would love for you to be able to start, though, from a very human creative space. And if AI can assist you later, great. But we want the majority, or at least the home base of your creative work, including your grant, to start with a person, a real life person. Some more key information. We are definitely leaning more into this accessibility, especially with the aspect of public art itself. Most of you may be already familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act. There are some sources there. You can also, I think, go to our website and check it out. I think we have links there. And we also have a working definition for accessibility. And that is making sure everyone can take part in arts and cultural activities. This can mean removing barriers and making changes so everyone can join in. It can include the public in planning and reviewing a project. Any steps should match what each organization can afford and manage, since every organization is different. We have an individual on our staff who is dedicated to this to the conversation of accessibility, and she is actually my co-pilot today again. Her name is Victoria Meeks. If you have any questions regarding accessibility, please give Victoria a call at 601-359-6031 or give her an email at vmeek@arts.ms.gov. Also, key things that you should know about accessibility. We do ask for it to learn more about the accessibility that your organization does or has thought about for public art, but it does not count against you if you don't have everything perfect. We're just trying to learn. All right. especially for today's grant. I thought it would, today's grant, but this year has been a pretty strong year for MAC regarding public art. And so we thought we'd create a working definition to have a positionality regarding like what we are thinking about when we say public art. Public art is the intentional presentation of any artistic discipline in a public space with free public access, designed to activate the space and foster community dialogue. You may notice that in that sentence, there are 3 areas that are underlined. We have that there because this reflects the basic core elements of how public art is defined on a larger scale in the arts and culture world. And here we go. When we talk about public art, there are 3 basic core elements that many professionals can agree upon. Everybody has their own kind of definition of what public art is, but at the end of the day, these 3 elements come into play every single time. So the first, community dialogue, and that truly means like the why, the intention. What is this art saying to the public? What's the conversation between the artwork and the people who gather around it? What's the conversation that the audience is having but amongst themselves when they're not even near the public artwork? How does it reflect the community? How is the community involved in it? Second is a public and accessible space. What usually comes to mind may be a park or maybe public art in a roundabout, obviously a mural on the side of a building. But is it possible for people to truly experience the art without having to pay, without having to go through closed doors? And sometimes when we say a public and accessible space, you may be offered a private building with a really great wall. As long as people can experience it from street level and the sidewalk, it is public. And finally, in order for public art to occur, you have to have art. But that means one or more art disciplines, and I want to say this very loudly. These art disciplines definitely include folk traditional arts. So we don't want to necessarily think of just the fine arts. This is a very inclusive field of what can be experienced. And so that means that when we think about public art, normally like the first idea that pops to mind is a permanent public art fixture that's rooted in 2D or 3D. 2D equals murals, or anything that could be like projected onto a wall. 3D equals monuments, landmarks, and sculptures. But no, that just means it's permanent public art, but it does not mean it is public art. It's just a part of public art. So we've got our core elements down, but on these outside circles are all the common factors that help shape and mold the public art process. And so there's so many, and these are not an exhaustive list by any means, but these are like the ones that really come up a lot of the time. So we'll talk just a little bit. So let's talk about available budget. Again, for the MAC America 250 Public Art Grant, we've got the $12,000 grant available and the $8,000 grant available. You may be looking at your budget and trying to fit something into those budgets, which is fine. But if you are also thinking about a program or a project that far exceeds what the MAC is putting out, we want to see those numbers in the budget. So your public art may be affected by what you have currently available, cash-wise or otherwise. Another thing to think about is ownership. Who at the end of the day owns the public art? Is it the city? Is it the public? What rights does the artist have towards that artwork? Are they allowed to recreate that artwork elsewhere? We're not asking for this in our grant application, but it may be things to consider if you should be awarded, to think about from the point of view of a contract. Other things, Because MAC is the funder, we have a very specific vision, and that vision will come into three themes that we'll talk about later. And the artist vision. The artist could be a professional artist or it could be a team of artists. It could be your community has decided to come together to create the art themselves. How do you have the conversation between what the artist wants and what the funder is asking for? So again, those are just a few things to think about. Again, not all of this will be asked by the grant, but it may be worth considering in your contracts and amongst your team. All right, some things to help you. If you really enjoyed nerding out with me in those last two slides, you can visit the America250 Mississippi Public Art Grant link on the MAC website because we made two downloadable companion guides. The first talks a little bit more. It's a public art supplemental guide that talks a little bit more about what public art is and how to maximize possibilities of your project with MAC and the Mississippi Humanities Council grants. The second is a public art mini glossary. I want to say there's like 29 words that will be really, really useful for this grant or future grants that will help your narrative be a little bit more competitive. We also have the MAC America250 frequently asked questions. All right, speaking of frequently asked questions, I'll say this again. Do I have to create a brand new project to be eligible for this grant? No, it just needs to fit the guidelines and project expenses that are incurred between March 1st and June 30th of 2026. Another frequently asked question, do I have to create a mural? Nope. One of the beautiful things in doing this research about Mississippi is learning that Mississippi already has like a wealth of public art that already exists. And we do it really, really well, actually. So let's look at some examples just to get your imagination going. First, a Blue Front Cafe in Betonia, Mississippi. I think it's the longest running juke joint in Mississippi playing live music. And so we would consider this performance-based public art. The art, so if you notice at the bottom, these are the three core elements, right? Oh, sorry. Whoops. Back here. We've got the art discipline is obviously music, specifically the blues. What is the community dialogue? Well, this is Mississippi blues tradition. It is a trusted third space in the community as well as the arts or music community. We can talk about tourism and creative economy as well as placekeeping. And what's the space? The space, it's open to community, free to experience music. Frequently, they have music out on the porch areas. People can just drive up and get out of their cars, sit at a table, and just listen to the music. Another example is the Blessing of the Fleets on the Gulf Coast. So this is an example of cultural traditions as public art. The art discipline is visual because we're decorating our shrimp boats. And it is performance-based because eventually you're going to have to do the boat parade to get your blessings. The community dialogues, it's a Gulf Coast specific tradition. We're talking about seafood economy. We are talking about festivals that are associated with the blessing of the fleets. We're talking about faith and religion, memory keeping, intergenerational experiences. And again, and I'm going to say this again, space, it's open to community and free to experience. And last one, and this is, I learned about this one this year, Medicine Wheel Garden in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. This is a great example of environmental and functional art as public art. And actually, this particular public art inspired two other public arts in New Orleans. The art discipline, it's visual, it's 3D, it's landscape architecture. The community dialogue, we're talking about Native American traditions, agriculture and nature, health and well-being, placemaking, education, and it's another trusted third space. And you're going to get sick of me saying this, but the space, it is open to community and free to experience. All right, my good people, we are now at the question break, and I'm going to turn to my co-pilot, Victoria. Do we have any questions from the audience?
So I'm not seeing any questions in the designated Q&A area or in the chat. So, yeah, if anyone would like to share questions in either of those places, um, we can talk about them.
For sure. And I'm going to drink my water real quick, and if we'll start at 3:25 if that's okay, and just give some time for questions or thoughts. All right, here we go.
Yeah, still no thoughts in the Q&A, but yeah, okay, I
Yeah,
see we're moving on. But there will be another
it's
section,
okay.
right? There will be another
Abs-
section, right?
Absolutely, there is definitely
Okay.
another session. Yep.
Or
Or
another
section.
for questions.
Yes, we have one more built in. And if we have any time at the end, I will make sure to stay until the hour is done if people just want to just chat.
Okay.
All right. Moving on, let's talk about the MAC America 250 Public Art Grant criteria. We've got three themes to choose from. You don't even have to choose just one. In fact, if you're really clever, tying in all three of these themes would be lovely. Um, where you will find these themes will be in your project narrative. I cut down the characters. Normally, you may see, I think, around eight. If you were doing any other Mac grant, it may ask for, I think, 8,600 characters. We cut it down to 8,000. And if you are like not the best grant writer in the world, that's okay. So we broke it up into three areas. And if you just follow these three areas, you would be good to go. First, we want to see the artwork statement. What is your artwork saying? What's the America 250 theme? Um, what are any of those themes that we talked about, like thinking about those last three examples? What can we pull to talk about this public artwork? What materials will you use? Who is your artist? What are the dimensions? Give us like those very technical aspects of the artwork as well. Second, give us a timeline of what you're thinking on how to create this artwork and literally just do exactly what we're seeing right here. Put a date, dot, 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 what's the action? The third is the community involvement and accessibility. You're going to hear me say this so many times. There's a million different ways to approach community involvement. Again, it's such an integral part to the public art aspect. Does community involvement look like they are at the table from the very beginning of creating this idea of the public art? Are they actually creating the public art? Are they working alongside a contracted artist? Um, are they being featured in the public art? Any which way that you can talk about community involvement, we definitely want to hear about it. So let's get into the first theme. Um, I purposely tried to model as closely as possible what the Mississippi Humanities Council had already put out for their themes for their grants. I did this because let's just say that you do have a public art project in mind, but you also wanted to have a parade for it. Well, then the public art that you would submit to the Mississippi Arts Commission versus the parade that you may want to present to Mississippi Humanities Council, those are two totally different projects that could live within the same theme, right? And so I wanted to make sure that when you were thinking about your projects that you weren't limited to this one thing. How can you maximize this experience next year? So we the people, the American ideal and fundamental rights are the closest that we have to the Mississippi Humanities Council, one of their themes. And I'll just go ahead and read it. All of this is coming, sorry, the language regarding the American ideal and fundamental rights are coming straight from the Library of Congress. If you would like that link, I would be more than happy to share it with you so you can do a deep dive. Mississippi is at the forefront of redefining the American ideal and the nation's understanding of fundamental rights. How does your public art offer a Mississippi perspective or interpretation of these foundational concepts as set forth in the U.S. Constitution? The ideal. All people are created equal. Fundamental rights, liberty, free speech, freedom of religion, due process and law rather, and freedom of assembly. Eligible applicants are encouraged to explore how these ideals are expressed, challenged, or reimagined through the lens of Mississippi's unique history and voices. One of the um, one of the examples that keeps coming forth when I think about like what could be a public art project in regards to the We the People is thinking about Martin Luther King's Poor People's Campaign and the mule train that started in Marks, Mississippi, and then traveled across Mississippi into Northeast Mississippi, and thinking about all the fundamental rights that were associated with that original story and what could it look like to have a public art that represented that train. So that's a really very specific Mississippi example that ties very beautifully within this theme. Okay, the second theme. This is the most popular theme. Most of our, when I hear stories about people or organizations wanting to do this grant, a lot of it is fitting within this category. Power of people in place, Mississippi and the American story. Through public art, celebrate what makes your community and its culture distinct. How does your local story contribute to the broader narrative of Mississippi's story and the American experience? Consider intersectional elements such as, and I'll just name a few here, the natural world and agriculture, folk traditions, including site-specific and regional local art forms, any social practices that your community does together. And this one may seem like out of left field, but it's not really. Economic and technological contributions. If your area is really well known for, I don't know, drone innovation. what does that mean for your community to have this technology in your space, and what does it mean to the bigger conversation in America or across the world? So this theme invites eligible applicants to reflect on the power of people in place in shaping Mississippi identity, memory, and meaning. And the last theme, which is really exciting, because Mississippi has contributed and made a lot of things that have influenced this nation. The future of Mississippi, a world of possibilities. Mississippi has profoundly influenced the cultural vocabulary of the nation and the world through our literature, music, visual arts, and folk life. Rooted in a Mississippi perspective, imagine the future through public art. What new ideas, movements, or art forms might emerge from Mississippi to further influence the nation? How will Mississippi's creative legacy continue to shape what's possible? This theme is a call to dream boldly and create forward. So let's take the drone example again. Let's imagine that your community is known for flight, like perhaps there was like crop dusters there and now there's drones. And what does it look like for drones to, I don't know, perhaps make an evening light display telling the story of your community? That could be a really interesting way to think about the future of art and the future of Mississippi. Okay, here is something you really definitely want to pay attention to, and this is the public art grant criteria. This is how your application will be scored. We've got 4 panelists, and they will be asked to score your application in 4 areas. The first 2 areas that we will talk about have the scoring points of 1 through 20 points per area. And the final 2 areas are 1 through 30 points per area. So 1 equals the lowest, 20 to 30 equals the highest. You can, at the end of, once you receive your notification of whether you've been awarded or not, you can request your panelists' comments. I would highly, highly, highly suggest that anytime that you do a grant, whether it's with us or with other funding organizations, to request your panelists' comments. They provide really great insight on how to, on what the panelists are thinking, how to edit some areas, and then try again if you'd like for the next grant. Okay, definitely use the following scoring criteria to support your application. If you follow this, you should be pretty solid. All right. before we even get there, I'm not even sure why I even put that thing there, but I teased you and I didn't mean to. So the MAC staff, how this process goes is that the MAC staff first reviews your application for eligibility. We are not the ones who decide if you are awarded or not. We just want to make sure that you have fit all the criteria for eligibility. Then these applications are given to the panelists who are arts professionals and across the U.S. They're very excited about reading your applications, and they're given around 2+ weeks to review grant applications. And then we come together. A MAC staff facilitates review of those scores with panelists, and those panelists come to consensus regarding recommendations. In other words, panelists also don't choose the awardees, they just give recommendations. And those recommendations are then given to the MAC Board of Directors during a special meeting, and they will then approve who the awardees are. So there's that. Okay. Criteria number 1. Project is strongly aligned to one or more MAC America 250 public art grant themes. Choose one or more of those themes. Tie it very strongly to your artwork narrative. The max you can get is 20 points. Is the narrative a story that isn't widely known? Oh, by the way, these are questions that panelists are going to be asked to consider. Is the narrative a story that isn't widely known? How does the narrative fit into the larger Mississippi story and or the larger American story? How does the narrative and or public art speak to the future of the community, both locally and at large? Criteria 2. Reasonable and responsible budget, 20 points. Is there a confirmed or tentative cash match and in-kind contribution? Remember, we've got that one-to-one match. 10% is required minimum cash. The remaining 90 can be in kind. Does the budget seem reasonable for what the applicant is wishing to create? I'm going to bring that drone example back. Let's just say that you did decide to do the drone show on the 4th of July. And when you crunch the numbers, it's definitely going to be 8,000 kajillion billion dollars. And then you give us a budget that says, no, it's totally fine. We can totally do it in 24,000. No, we want to see like the full, we want to see the full budget. There's a lot of reasons why we want to see that. Again, we want to make sure that it would you be a good steward of this money? Are we using it well? And for me, I like to be able to look at these budgets to kind of track like how much are things costing for our organizations and for folks who are wanting to get grant funding from us. How is the money moving and what you need? The last thing, are contracted artists and creatives being paid? If you are contracting an artist or a creative to create the public artwork, they must be paid, please. Thank you. Let's talk about the budget just a little bit more. Let me reiterate that the budget is for the creation of the public artwork. If you are really wanting to have an unveiling, unfortunately, this grant is not going to cover the expenses for an unveiling. Everything needs to go towards the creation of the public art. Your project must include the entire award request. No partial grants will be awarded. If you're going for an $8,000 grant, you cannot ask for $7,600. We have to go all the way to the $8,000. Again, the one-to-one match. I just spoke about this. When we think about in kind, some areas to consider. Awarded org salaries time, any volunteer time, any government assets being donated, any resource donations. I think I used an example earlier. If someone's donating a wall, that has value. That's in kind. At the base level, because we are a one-to-one match, your artwork will either have a 24K project value or a 16K project value. Again, that's like the baseline. It can be more than that, but because of the one-to-one match, this is what we're looking for. Indirect costs are capped to 10% of the total project budget. Again, artist fees cannot be considered as an in-kind donation. Please pay your artists. Criteria 3, artistic quality, 30 points. The proposed public artwork meets MAC's working definition of public art. Um, Proposed public artwork is thoughtful in its accessibility, it enhances community dialogue, and engages meaningfully within the selected artistic discipline. Work samples demonstrate the capabilities needed to create the public artwork. Okay, let's clarify this just a little bit more. Let's just say that your organization has decided not to contract an artist. That's totally fine. Let's just say the community's like, we want to make it ourselves. We want to make this beautiful mural. We can do it. Great. Artistic quality in this sense does not mean the best of the best of the best of the technical, right? We want to make sure that the artistic quality really lives in the concept of public art, the dialogue, accessibility, and what art form are you using. Your work samples, if you are working with a contracted artist, and we'll go into a little bit more, then we definitely want to see work samples from those artists. But if you're working with community, we would want to see work samples that reflect what you think are successful community programs with arts and culture. Um, if you are a first time, wait, this might be on the next slide. Let's go on the next slide. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so 5 to 7 work samples are required. Please check for further guidelines on the MAC A250 site. If you are working with a contracted artist, oh, I'm sorry. It's after 3 o'clock. My brain starts slowing down right here. So one work sample must be a sample of the proposed public artwork. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is like the best design ever. Like even if you're just able to like sketch it out and this is what we're thinking, it's going to be community based. These are colors. Great. If you are working with a contracted artist, they may already be able to provide you a sleeker design or work sample. If you are working with contracted artists or an artistic team, one work sample per artist or artistic team. If this is your first time applying for an arts and culture grant, like really lean in on your artistic team and creative team or those programs that you have done in the past that demonstrate arts and culture with community. If you're experienced in arts and culture programming, use your strongest previous arts and culture work, especially if they are tied to community involvement and accessibility. Criteria 4, community ties, collaborations, and partnerships, 30 points. 2 questions. What are the conditions regarding public access to experience the public artwork? Basically what we're asking here is, are you charging a fee to see the public artwork? Then it's not going to work. Are you putting the artwork in a security lockbox behind a mystery door in a house that no one can get into? That will also be a problem. We can't access that artwork. The second question is there a sense of a mutually respectful relationship between the applicant's proposed public art, and the community? And I want to focus on the mutually respectful relationship because, again, the concept of community dialogue needs to be present. If the community is walking out of their houses one day and they see a public art just right dab in the middle of their neighborhood and they have no idea where it came from, that could present some issues. So at some capacity, what does it look like for community to be involved? All right, supplemental materials. We're going to be asking for 3 areas, 3.5, let's say 3.5 areas. So first is your bios. Who are the key artistic and admin personnel directly involved with the creation of the public artwork? Who are your partners? If we can have bios of 150 words max. If you are still working on contracts with folks, just add the word tentative before their names so we know. And then if you could place all of those into one document and upload it, that'd be lovely. Next, if you have letters of agreement, signed contracts, MOUs, MOAs, a resolution, any of those things that say, hey, we are definitely working together, here's proof, add that. If you are still working on confirming an artist, provide a brief timeline for securing an artist or artistic team. artist resumes, if you have already contracted those artists, a 2-page max resume for each artist and or artistic team. And the half one right here is any other supporting materials that can strengthen your proposed public artwork proposal. Could that look like newspaper articles? Could that look like a link to a news segment? Maybe some extra pictures that you want to throw in. That would be this space right here to add some more teeth to your proposal. All right, Victoria, guess what? I promised you a question break. Do we have any?
Okay, so currently no questions in the Q&A area or the chat at this moment.
Awesome. Well, not awesome. Maybe I'm speaking too fast. I don't know. So we're gonna give it another, maybe wait until 3:45 for me to breathe and get some water. And should anyone want to drop a question? Thank you so much, Victoria.
Okay, I did actually have a question.
Sure.
When you were talking about like the work of art, the proposed work of art,
Hmm.
the work of art that has yet to be realized, is this something like can it be like a sketch on a piece of paper that's like scanned and uploaded, or like what is that? What can that look like?
Like for the work sample?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it depends on what you're wanting to present. So if you're really wanting to do like a mural or a sculpture, having a sketch would suffice. It would having a collage
Mm.
of inspirations of you think like you're going to go in this direction would be good. Normally, if you're working with a contracted visual artist, they will be able to give you a draft of what is being proposed. But if you're doing this from the grassroots devising community standpoint, like a collage, a sketch, um, if you're working with children, I'm just throwing out ideas here. If you're working with children, like having their drawings as part of a PDF. Like this is what we're drawing our inspiration from, and I think this is the direction that we're going. Um, Having said that, it would then depend a lot on your narrative to help me understand, or not me, I'm sorry, help the panelists understand what the vision will be at the end of the day, right? Unfortunately, I cannot like jump into your brains and see what you're seeing. And so you're going to have to use your words really, really well for us to see what you're seeing. Does that answer your question, Victoria?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. All right, it is 3:46, and we are going to move forward. Again, we're now going into the MAC grant portal and application. If you do not have this bookmarked, please do. When you go to this site, you will see the page or the screen split into two. You're going to look towards the left. Well, you'll have a username and a password. If you have not created your grant profile, you're going to click a link underneath the username and the password to create that profile. So let's just go there now. Do, 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 do. Oh, oh my goodness, something happened. Just one second. All right. Just to make sure, hey, Victoria, Copilot, are you seeing the application?
I'm now seeing the application, yes.
Thank you so much. Again, I am probably the only millennial on this earth who is not versed in Zoom. So once you enter the grant portal, you will see this application for America 250. And this is what it's going to look like. If you see all of these blue bands, yes, it is a very long application. It is lengthy. It is everywhere. But should you ever get lost or think about things of like, what can I upload, what can I not upload, always come to the very top, the Introduction to Online Application Portal. And from there, you're going to have your basic 101 information there to assist you. If you should still get lost, please just give me a phone call so we can help you. Um, Also, if you are a super grant writer and can get things done in one day, congratulations. I wish I had your skill sets. I cannot. So we also have the capabilities to save our progress as we go. So don't feel like you have to do this in one day. The deadline is January 15th. Try to space it out. We've got holidays coming up, and that is already an overwhelming time. So a little bit every day. We've already done the America250 Public Art Grant Overview. Let's go to the organization information. I'm speaking to our newbies here. If this is your first time applying for an America250 grant or any MAC grant, really, you're going to be asked a couple of things. So you want to have this in your drawer for any grant, really. The year that your org was founded, which is different from their incorporation date. This is the date that when you actually became a 501c3. You're also going to need definitely your IRS 501c3 determination letter. You're going to want to scan that to upload. You will also need, and time is of the essence if you have not done this already, if you are a brand new organization, you really want to get that sam.gov unique entity ID. You will literally go to sam.gov to apply for that. You're going to get your unique entity ID. You're going to put it right there. And basic things we're asking for your first time. We want to know your organizational snapshot and any key collaborators there. You're also going to want to know, again, keep it in your drawer, your legislative districts. And it's okay if you don't know. We've got these links off to the side to help you learn who your representation is, because we do work for the Mississippi legislature and they are one of our funders. We want to keep track of these. We talked about the narrative. You're going to find that there. The next area will be getting all the information we can about your board staff and community statistics. Having this in a document anywhere for any time is also a great idea. We want to know who they are. We want to know that they are current, that they're currently on board. Let's see. All right, when we talk about the number of artists taking part in the project, we are talking specifically about the creation of the artwork. So you may be imagining a festival, parade, public artwork, all the things under one theme. We are just looking for specifically who is hands-on on the creation of the public art. And those are for these questions right here. When we talk about the list of the total population for the community you serve, that could be a geographical number. That could be a number of people who on average come through your door any given month. It could be the number of people on average who attend your programs and projects. That is whoever you consider your community is who you serve. So you put that number right there. Let's see. Similar to that. Oh, budget information. All right. Okay. So budget information. Some of you have probably seen this already. For those who have not, again, when you create your budget, it is for the creation of the public art. You are going to put the expense in this column here. You can describe the expense if you'd like. So let's take, for example, that you are contracting an artist who lives in Antarctica and you really want them to come to Mississippi where it's warmer, and they're going to stay in Mississippi for I don't know, 3 months and to create this artwork, and maybe having a description as to why the lodging costs $20 million may be helpful right here. So if we can go, oh, okay, that makes sense. We want to make sure that your budget is responsible and the numbers add up. You will then look at the MAC grant and put the what the expense could be. So if you were using the MAC grant solely for the artist fees, you would put that artist fee right there as an expense. And if you have an expense, you must have an income. So everything from the expenses should be reflected in some capacity here. So let's just say that $20 million lodging from your artist in Antarctica is coming out of a foundation grant. Well, then maybe you might want to redescribe it right here and put that cost right there, or that income right there, or maybe that foundation has a really nice hotel and they're going to give it in kind. You would add it to that in kind amount right there. And everything else should calculate for you. If you have any other descriptions regarding the budget to give us a better understanding of what we're looking at, feel free to write those notes right here. When I work with when I do reviews as a panelist in other areas of the nation, one of the first things that I tell folks is that I view the budget as a moral contract, an ethical contract to how this money will be spent. And so if you're saying that you're going to spend it on X, Y, and Z, then let's make sure we're spending it on X, Y, and Z. But if you need some flexibility, some understanding on why things might move later, go ahead and make yourself known as to why that could be here. All right. We talked about accessibility. Again, it's not going to ding you if you are not having the most perfect accessibility ever. I mean, the truly big thing is making sure that people do not have to pay to experience the public art. We are wanting to learn more about how your organization is providing accessibilities. One thing to bring you to your attention regarding this project grant is site ownership. We want to again make sure that it's been okayed for that public art to be present in that space. Joe Blow, who owns the pizza shop, may not want to wake up and see that his walls have now become like a big giant golden eagle. That you want to make sure that you get an okay from Joe Blow, the pizza owner, before you do that. And we want to be able to see that you have done that. Moving forward, we talked about work samples, supplemental materials. Let's talk about these certification and electronic signatures. At the top of this, we talked about AI. We want to make sure have a communication with you if you use AI or not. Again, it's not going to work against you if you needed generative AI for assistance. If you did answer yes for generative AI, if you could explain how it was used here, that would be lovely. And then we're getting down to the bottom. You will then put your name here if you're the project director or the person doing the grant, first and last name, what's your title, what's the date, and if you are writing on behalf of an organization, you will clarify that in this area here. Then the final step, once everything has been put in, the cherry on top is making sure that you've got the authorizing official approval. So an authorizing official is someone who is able to sign off on contracts as well as signing off on checks. This is not going to be your intern. This is not going to be maybe a colleague who has a similar parallel role as you. This is going to most likely be if you're an executive director, it's going to be someone on the board, maybe the board president. If you are with a school, it's definitely going to be your principal. So you would put the email address here. compose the email. Hey, sir, ma'am, folks, can you sign off on this? Now, you're going to submit this application, but it's also your responsibility to make sure the authorizing official also signs the application. They get the email from us, they've got to okay it. And they have to okay it by what date? January 15th by 11:59 p.m. CST. Otherwise, your application is ineligible. All right. I'm going to stop sharing here and get back to this one. Okay. So if this is your first time applying, please remember the 501c3 determination letter. Make sure you got your legislative district information. We got to have 2 signatures, program director, authorizing official. We also have, if you should need it, optional meeting times with me. The first is a 45-minute creative soundboarding. It's really us playing, throwing spaghetti on the wall, figuring out what could the public art project be for your community. Again, I don't choose the awardees. I can help you as much as I want and however I want. Yay! And then the grant review, and let's just say we got the great idea. You've written your second, third drafts. You really need a second pair of eyes. I'm available for that as well. Just send it to me 24 hours in advance before our meeting, and then I can guide you from there. Again, you can email me or call me. I am here to help you. January 15th, 2026, 11:59 p.m. Your application must be in with that authorizing official's signature. Unfortunately, late applications will not be accepted. And with that, Victoria, do we have any other questions from the attendees?
No other questions.
Beautiful. All right, good people. I'm going to stop sharing right there. It is 4 o'clock. Thank you so much for being with us. If you would like this PDF, I'd be more than happy to send it to you via email. Feel free to screenshot this for my phone number and email address. And other than that, have a beautiful and creative rest of your week. Thanks so much.